What if the boy everyone called foolish was secretly wiser than the king himself? Watch how one small silver coin teaches a life-changing lesson. Welcome to Easy English Official. Today we will learn a beautiful story that teaches us not to show off, but to be wise and calm. Sometimes quiet people are not weak, they are just stronger inside. Chapter 1. The Clever Minister. Long ago, in a bright and busy kingdom, there lived a minister who was loved by many. He was clever, calm, and always ready to help his king with wise advice. His mind was sharp, and his words were always full of truth and kindness. People said that without him, the king could not make any big decision at all. Every morning, the minister walked through the royal garden, thinking about how to make the kingdom better. He watched the people, listened to their problems, and helped them find peace. His voice was soft, yet everyone respected it deeply. Even the king called him the heart of my court. The king trusted him more than anyone else in the palace. Whenever trouble came, it was the minister who found the answer. His clever plans saved the kingdom many times, from wars and hunger to the smallest court arguments. The king often said, "With you beside me, my kingdom will never fall." But not everyone felt happy about the minister's greatness. Some men in the court were jealous of his wisdom and his closeness to the king. They whispered to each other that the minister was too proud and too powerful. In their hearts, they dreamed of finding a way to make him look foolish. The minister, however, did not care for power or fame. He served his king out of love, not out of pride. Every action he took came from kindness, not from a wish to be seen. That is why, even when others laughed behind his back, he stayed calm and quiet. The court was a place full of glitter and gossip. Many people tried to look important by talking loudly and showing off their knowledge. But the minister was different. He believed that wisdom did not need noise. He believed that the loudest man was often the weakest one. One afternoon, the king invited his court to a great meeting. He wanted to talk about new plans for the harvest season. As always, he asked the minister for his thoughts first. The minister spoke slowly, clearly, and with a smile that made everyone listen. His words were so simple, yet so deep, that even the jealous courtiers stayed quiet. They wanted to find a mistake, but there was none to find. Every sentence made sense, and every idea brought peace to the king's mind. It was as if wisdom itself sat beside him. The people of the kingdom loved their minister dearly. They said he had the heart of a teacher and the mind of a sage. Whenever there was conflict in the villages, he would go himself to calm the people. He never used his power to scare others, only to guide them gently. At home, the minister lived a very humble life. His house was simple, his clothes plain, and his meals light. He believed that too much comfort made the mind lazy. His joy came not from gold or silver, but from serving with honesty. The king often invited the minister to dine with him. During these dinners, they spoke not of wealth or war, but of justice, peace, and the happiness of their people. The minister always reminded the king that true power came from kindness, and the king admired him more for it every day. However, the jealous courtiers never stopped planning against him. They watched his every move, waiting for a small mistake to turn into a scandal. Their envy grew like fire under dry leaves, spreading quietly and dangerously. The minister knew it, but he chose silence instead of anger. He once told his son, "When people envy you, they only see your success, not your struggle." His son listened carefully, still young but wise enough to understand. He admired his father's calmness and wanted to be just like him. But life had a surprise waiting for both of them. The minister's son was not known for cleverness. He was kind, honest, and simple-minded, which made others laugh at him. The people of the court called him the foolish prince's friend. But the minister saw something deeper in his boy's eyes, a quiet kind of intelligence. The boy often spent time helping poor people in the streets. He carried food to old women and played with children from the villages. He did not speak much, but his actions spoke louder than words. The minister loved him deeply for his pure heart. One morning, as the sun rose over the palace towers, the minister walked to the court early. The golden light shone on his face as he greeted the guards with warmth. He felt proud, yet peaceful, unaware that his wisdom would soon be tested. That day would change how everyone saw his son. When he entered the court, the king was already there, sitting on his high chair. The courtiers whispered as the minister walked in, pretending to bow but smiling behind his back. The king looked serious, his eyes watching every movement. The air in the room felt heavy, filled with silent judgment. The king cleared his throat and said, "My dear minister, you are wise indeed, but your son is not." The words echoed through the hall like thunder. The minister felt his heart tighten, unsure of what had gone wrong. He bowed and asked softly, "Why do you say this, my king?" The king's eyes sparkled with amusement as he spoke again. "Every day I test your son. I ask him one simple question. What is more valuable, gold or silver? And every time he says silver." The courtiers laughed loudly, their voices bouncing off the marble walls. The minister stayed silent for a moment, his face calm, but his heart burning inside. He could not understand why his son would answer like that. Was he really foolish, or was there something more to it? The laughter around him felt sharper than any sword. After the meeting ended, the minister bowed and left quietly. He walked back home with slow steps, thinking deeply. The palace gates closed behind him, but the echo of laughter stayed in his mind. He knew he needed to find the truth behind his son's strange answer. That evening, as the sun turned red and the sky grew soft, the minister found his son sitting near the window. The boy was playing with 2 coins, one gold, one silver. The sight made the minister's heart ache, but he stayed calm and asked gently, "My son, which coin is more valuable?" The boy looked up and smiled, his eyes innocent, yet full of confidence. "Gold, father," he said softly. The minister raised his eyebrows and asked, "Then why do you tell the king that silver is more valuable?" The boy's answer would change everything. The minister leaned closer, waiting patiently. His son took a deep breath, as if preparing to reveal a secret he had kept for a long time. Outside, the sound of evening bells filled the air. Inside, silence wrapped around them like a story waiting to unfold. And so began the lesson that would teach the whole kingdom about the power of quiet wisdom. The minister had no idea that his son's simple words would soon silence every jealous tongue. It was not pride or cleverness that would win that day, but calm, thoughtful understanding. In that moment, the story of the clever minister was no longer just about the father. It was also about the son, the one the world called foolish, but who held the heart of true wisdom. Sometimes, the quietest minds hide the loudest truths. Chapter 2. The King's Question. The morning sun poured through the palace windows, filling the hall with a golden glow. The king sat on his grand chair, surrounded by his ministers and courtiers. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a spark of mischief. That day, he had something special on his mind. The court was full of laughter and light chatter as everyone waited for the king to speak. Some people discussed politics, while others gossiped quietly about royal news. The minister, as always, stood near the king, ready to serve. He had no idea that this day would test his heart. The king looked at the minister with a small smile. "My dear minister," he began, his voice smooth but firm, "you are very wise." Everyone nodded in agreement because it was true. But then the king's smile faded, and he said something unexpected. "Your son, however, is foolish," the king continued, leaning back on his throne. The words shocked the entire court into silence. Even the birds outside the tall windows seemed to stop singing. The minister looked at the king, confused and hurt. The minister bowed respectfully and asked, "Why do you say this, Your Majesty?" His voice was calm, though his heart was uneasy. He had always believed that his son, though quiet, was thoughtful. The idea of him being called foolish cut deeply. The king raised his eyebrows and said, "Every morning, when I go to meet the people, your son is there." His tone was playful, but his eyes were watching the minister closely. "I ask him the same question every day," he continued slowly, "and every time his answer makes the whole court laugh." The courtiers exchanged knowing smiles. Some of them whispered behind their fans, enjoying the tension in the air. The minister stood tall and still, waiting to hear the rest of the story. He knew the king would not speak without a reason. Finally, the king said, "I ask him, what is more valuable, gold or silver?" The room went quiet as everyone listened. "And every day," he says, "silver is more valuable than gold." The king gave a half smile, and laughter began to spread like fire through the room. The minister's face remained calm, but his heart sank. He could hear the laughter echoing against the marble walls. Some courtiers even covered their mouths to hide their smiles. The minister felt his pride slowly melting away under their eyes. He wondered why his son would give such an answer. Did he not understand something so simple? The thought of his son being the joke of the court made him uneasy. Still, he stayed silent out of respect for the king. The king leaned forward and said softly, "You are the wisest man I know. But your son does not seem to share your wisdom." The words were sharp, yet spoken with a friendly tone. It was as if the king was teasing, not insulting. But it still hurt. The minister forced a gentle smile, hiding his disappointment. He knew the king liked humor, but this joke felt personal. He thought about how people were laughing not just at his son, but at him as well. Yet he remained polite and humble. The courtiers continued to laugh and whisper. "A wise father and a foolish son," one of them murmured. Another chuckled, "Perhaps wisdom skips a generation." Their words were like tiny knives, cutting quietly into the minister's dignity. The king noticed the minister's silence and decided to explain further. "It is strange," he said, "because your son seems honest and kind. But how can someone so simple not understand that gold is worth more than silver?" The king spoke as if puzzled, though a small smile danced on his lips. The minister bowed again and said softly, "Your Majesty, perhaps there is more to the story than it seems." The king raised an eyebrow but did not reply. He enjoyed seeing how the minister would handle this. The court waited for the next move. In his heart, The minister tried to stay calm. He knew the king was not cruel, only curious. Yet the laughter from others made him feel cornered. Pride and patience wrestled quietly inside him. The room slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the minister's mind stayed on his son. He remembered his boy's quiet smile, his gentle heart, and his calm way of thinking. There had to be a reason for his strange answer. The minister promised himself to find out that day. When the meeting ended, the courtiers walked away, still laughing softly. The king waved his hand, signaling that the matter was over, but the minister could not let it go. He bowed deeply and left the hall, his thoughts heavy with questions. As he stepped outside, the warm morning air greeted him, but his heart felt cold. The sound of laughter still followed him like a shadow. The palace that once felt like home now seemed full of doubt. He walked quietly toward his carriage, thinking only of his son. Along the way, he met some villagers who bowed respectfully. They greeted him with smiles, unaware of his worry. He smiled back gently, hiding his pain behind kindness. That was his nature, calm even in the face of insult. Inside the carriage, the minister looked out the window at the passing streets. Children were playing, traders were shouting, and life went on. But in his mind, one question kept repeating: why would my son choose silver over gold? The words echoed with every turn of the wheel. By the time he reached home, the minister had made up his mind. He would not judge his son until he knew the truth. There had to be a reason, a wise one, behind his son's strange answer. He was determined to understand it that evening. He stepped into his quiet house, greeted by the smell of warm tea. His wife noticed his worried face and asked what was wrong. He told her about the king's words, and she listened in silence. Together, they waited for their son to return. As the sun began to set, the minister stood near the window, lost in thought. The orange light of the evening touched his face softly. Somewhere deep down, he hoped his son would surprise him with wisdom. The sound of footsteps outside broke his thoughts. The door opened, and his son entered, smiling as always. The boy bowed respectfully and greeted his father with warmth. The minister looked at him quietly, wondering what to say first. That night, the real question was not from the king, but from a father to his son. And so the story of the king's question did not end in the palace. It followed the minister home, into the quiet of his heart. He knew that truth would soon reveal itself in the most unexpected way. The laughter of the court would one day turn into silence. Chapter 3. The Minister and His Son. When the minister reached home, he felt both tired and thoughtful. The king's words still echoed in his mind like an unanswered question. The laughter of the court had touched his pride, but not his peace. He decided that only his son could give him the truth he was seeking. His house was quiet and filled with the smell of evening tea. The servants bowed and moved carefully, sensing their master's heavy heart. The minister removed his royal robe and sat near the window. He waited patiently for his son to return from his walk in the market. Soon, gentle footsteps entered the room. His son came in, smiling politely as always, his eyes bright with innocence. The minister looked at him carefully, wondering how to begin the conversation. He wanted to ask calmly, but curiosity burned inside him. "My son," he said softly, "I have something to ask you." The boy nodded and sat down respectfully. The minister spoke again, his tone kind but serious. "Which metal is more valuable, gold or silver?" Without a pause, the boy answered, "Gold, father." His voice was clear and confident. The minister looked at him, surprised by how quickly he replied. It was clear that the boy knew the right answer. The minister leaned forward, trying to understand. "Then why," he asked gently, "do you tell the king that silver is more valuable?" For a moment, the boy stayed quiet, as if choosing his words carefully. His eyes shone with calm wisdom, not fear. The boy smiled slightly before speaking. "Father," he said, "every morning the king gives me 2 coins, 1 gold and 1 silver. He asks me to take the more valuable one." The minister listened carefully, his curiosity growing stronger. "I always take the silver coin," the boy continued softly. His tone was peaceful, not defensive. "The king laughs, and the people laugh with him. Then he walks away happy, thinking I am foolish." The minister blinked, confused but patient. The minister asked, "But why do you choose silver if you know gold is worth more?" The boy looked down at his hands, holding an invisible coin between his fingers. "Because, father," he said slowly, "if I take the gold coin even once, the king will stop playing his game." His words were simple but deep. The room grew quiet. The evening wind blew softly through the open window. The minister watched his son in silence, realizing that this was not foolishness, it was wisdom. The boy continued speaking gently, without pride or fear. "Every day," he said, "the king enjoys asking me this question. He laughs, and I get 1 silver coin. I have been doing this for many days now." He looked up and smiled. "These small coins have become many, and they remind me to be patient." The minister's eyes widened in surprise. He suddenly understood the truth behind his son's strange choice. His son had not been foolish. He had been quietly clever. The boy had turned a joke into a lesson in wisdom. The minister asked to see the coins, and the boy led him to his small room. He opened a wooden box hidden under his table. Inside, there were dozens of shining silver coins, stacked neatly and carefully. The sight left the minister speechless for a moment. He picked up one of the coins and smiled. The silver reflected the dim candlelight, soft but steady. "You have been collecting these from the king all this time?" he asked. The boy nodded proudly, his smile still calm and gentle. The minister laughed softly, shaking his head. "My son, you have taught me something I did not see." His voice was filled with both love and admiration. "You are wiser than the people who laugh at you." The boy's eyes glowed with quiet happiness. He said, "Father, sometimes people laugh because they don't understand." The minister listened closely, touched by his son's words. "If I took the gold coin once, they would stop laughing, but I would stop learning too. I prefer to keep learning every day." The minister felt proud beyond words. He realized that true intelligence was not about showing off in front of others. It was about understanding the right time, the right action, and the right silence. His son had mastered all 3. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder and said softly, "Let people laugh. You are doing something far greater than they can see." The boy smiled and nodded quietly. "Yes, father," he replied. "I only do what feels right." For a moment, they both sat in peaceful silence. The light from the window touched their faces, warm and golden. The minister thought of the king, the court, and all the laughter that morning. Soon, he would face them again, but this time, with pride. He imagined how the king would react if he knew the truth. Perhaps he would laugh again, or perhaps he would see the wisdom hidden in his little game. Either way, the minister felt no anger, only understanding. He knew wisdom had many forms, and this was one of them. The boy went on to say, "Father, I don't need everyone to know my reasons. It's enough that you understand." The minister nodded slowly, feeling both humbled and grateful. "True wisdom," he said, "does not need noise or attention." The boy smiled again, perfectly calm. Outside, the night was beginning to fall. The sounds of the village faded softly into the dark. Inside, the small house glowed with peace and quiet pride. It was a home filled not with gold, but with wisdom worth far more. The minister stood and walked to the window, looking at the stars above. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I will go to the king and tell him nothing. Let him think what he wishes." He smiled, knowing that silence would say more than words ever could. His son stood beside him, watching the stars as well. They both shared a moment of deep connection, the kind that only love and understanding can bring. The boy had taught his father something powerful, to see wisdom where others see foolishness. That night, their hearts rested peacefully. And so, the story of the foolish son became the story of true intelligence. The minister no longer cared about the laughter of others. What mattered now was the quiet success that came from patience and humility. In that calm moment, he felt richer than any king. The lesson of that evening would stay with the minister forever. He realized that sometimes those who seem simple carry the deepest wisdom of all. The boy had shown him the value of patience, silence, and quiet success. And from that day, the minister never judged quickly again. Chapter 4. The Secret of Silver Coins. The son looked calm and wise as he spoke to his father. His smile carried the confidence of someone who understood the world quietly. The minister could see that this was not the face of a foolish boy. It was the face of a thinker who had learned through patience. He said gently, "Every day the king gives me 2 coins, 1 gold and 1 silver." The words came out slowly, as if each carried a secret meaning. The minister listened carefully, wondering what his son would say next. The boy's calm voice filled the room like music. "He tells me to take the more valuable one," the boy continued. There was no pride in his tone, only quiet honesty. "And I always take the silver coin." His eyes sparkled with a soft light that made the minister's heart soften. The minister frowned slightly, trying to understand. It didn't make sense at first. "The king laughs and goes away?" he asked, puzzled by the simplicity of the act. The son nodded, smiling with gentle confidence. The minister leaned closer and asked, "But why do you take silver every day?" His voice was filled with real curiosity now, not anger. He wanted to see the wisdom behind the choice. He wanted to know what his son saw that others did not. The boy stood up silently and motioned for his father to follow. His steps were light, like someone walking toward a truth long kept safe. The minister followed him down the quiet hallway, his mind racing with questions. He felt something important was about to be revealed. They entered the son's room, a small and simple space filled with warmth. There was a wooden box placed under a small table. The boy knelt down and opened it slowly. Inside, a soft glow of silver coins shone like moonlight in the dim room. The minister's eyes widened in surprise. The box was full, coin after coin, each carefully placed and polished. He had never seen so much silver gathered together before. For a moment, he could only stare in silence. "Father," the boy said softly, "these are the coins I got from the king." His voice carried no pride, only a sense of gentle satisfaction. Every day, I take 1 silver coin and bring it home. The minister felt a wave of admiration rising inside him. He touched one of the coins and smiled faintly. It was cool and smooth under his fingers. "You have been doing this every day?" he asked quietly. The boy nodded, his eyes full of calm wisdom. The minister felt both proud and amazed. He realized this was not a story of greed or luck. It was a story of patience. His son had turned the king's laughter into his own quiet gain. He had turned a game into a daily blessing. The boy continued, "If I take the gold coin even once, the king will stop playing this game." His tone was calm, not fearful. "Then I will not get a silver coin every day." His words carried the weight of wisdom beyond his years. The minister stood still, letting the truth sink in. He finally understood what the boy had been doing all this time. His son had chosen the slow and steady path instead of the quick reward. It was a lesson in humility and foresight. He smiled with deep affection, his heart full of pride. "My son," he said softly, "you have shown me a wisdom greater than gold." The boy looked up, his eyes shining like polished silver. The moment between them was filled with peace. The minister thought about the king and the people who laughed. They all believed the boy was foolish, but they did not see the truth. The boy had been quietly growing richer while being called a fool. It was a perfect example of wisdom hidden in simplicity. He said gently, "Sometimes, my son, it is better to be silent and let the world laugh." The boy smiled knowingly and replied, "Yes, father, because the truth does not need to shout." Their words flowed like calm water, soft, clear, and wise. The minister sat beside his son, feeling a warmth inside his heart. He realized that wisdom did not always come with age or status. Sometimes it came from a humble heart that understood the power of patience. His son had just proved it. They looked together at the box of silver coins again. Each coin seemed to tell a story of a day lived wisely. The minister could almost hear the laughter of the king turning into silent respect. The silver shimmered like a quiet victory. The boy said softly, "Father, people see me as foolish because I don't take the gold." He paused and smiled gently. "But they do not see that I am saving something more valuable, the king's happiness and my steady gain." The minister nodded, deeply moved. He replied, "You have mastered the art of quiet success." The boy lowered his eyes modestly, not seeking praise. "I only do what feels right, father," he said humbly. "It is not about being clever, it is about being patient." Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in soft gold and silver. The minister looked at the colors and smiled at the perfect irony. Gold and silver filled the heavens just as they filled his thoughts. It was a moment of peace and understanding. He turned to his son and said, "Tomorrow, when I face the king again, I will remember your lesson." His voice carried calm strength. "Let them laugh. Wisdom needs no defense." The boy nodded quietly, happy that his father understood. They closed the box together, the sound of the lid gentle and final. The room felt sacred, like a temple of wisdom. The minister placed his hand on the box and whispered, "This silver is worth more than gold to me." The boy smiled, his heart full of pride. That night the minister could not sleep, but it was not because of worry. His mind was filled with thoughts of patience, laughter, and quiet success. He finally understood the true value of humility. His son had turned a game into a golden lesson of life. The story of the silver coins became more than just a clever trick. It became a symbol of wisdom, that only few could see. The minister knew that this lesson would last forever, in his heart, in his son's life, and in the history of the kingdom. Chapter 5. True Wisdom in Silence. The minister smiled softly, feeling a warmth grow in his heart. His eyes shone with pride as he looked at his son. The truth had finally revealed itself in the simplest way. His son was not foolish. He was quietly wise. He realized that true intelligence did not need loud words. It lived in actions that spoke for themselves. His son had chosen patience over pride. That choice was the mark of real wisdom. The minister thought of all the people in the court who had laughed. They saw only what their eyes could see. They never looked deeper to find the truth behind the actions. The boy's silence had hidden a greater strength. He understood now that sometimes wisdom speaks without words. It doesn't shout to be noticed. It waits quietly until the world is ready to understand. And when it does, the truth shines brighter than gold. The minister took a deep breath, feeling peace in his heart. His son had taught him more than any book or teacher ever could. This was not a lesson from the mind, but from the soul. It was about living with calmness and purpose. He remembered how the king laughed every morning. The sound of that laughter used to hurt him. But now, it brought him a strange sense of peace. He knew his son's silence had turned that laughter into wisdom. True wisdom, he realized, is not about winning arguments. It is about understanding when to stay silent. The strongest minds often speak the least. Their calmness carries more power than any words. The minister smiled at the thought. He could still hear his son's calm voice saying, "Father, the king enjoys it when I take the silver coin." Those simple words carried deep meaning. The boy had found happiness in patience. He thought about how the world often praises noise and speed, but real growth happens in quiet moments. Just like seeds grow underground before touching the sun, wisdom grows in silence before shining in action. That night, the minister sat by the window, watching the stars. The sky looked calm, endless, and full of quiet beauty. He thought about how wisdom was like that, silent, steady, and always shining. It didn't need to prove itself to anyone. He realized that people often call others foolish when they don't understand them. The world laughs at what it cannot see. But wisdom is not meant to please the crowd. It is meant to live peacefully within the heart. The next morning, the minister walked into the king's court with a smile. The people were curious because he looked so calm. The king greeted him warmly, unaware of what the minister had learned. A new light shone in the minister's eyes. The king said playfully, "Your son is still choosing silver, isn't he?" The court laughed again as usual, but this time the minister smiled with pride instead of pain. He knew that laughter could no longer hurt him. He bowed respectfully and said, "Your Majesty, my son is indeed wise." His words carried confidence and calmness. The king raised his eyebrows, surprised by the minister's tone. "Wise?" he asked. "How so?" The minister replied gently, "He knows that small patience brings great rewards." The court grew quiet as everyone listened. He understood that silence can win where words fail. His voice was soft but powerful. The king looked thoughtful, his smile fading into respect. For the first time, he began to see the truth. The boy's foolishness was not foolishness at all. It was wisdom hidden in simplicity. The king nodded slowly, realizing his mistake. The minister continued, "Your Majesty, we often think the loudest are the smartest." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But sometimes, The quietest people understand the most. The court fell completely silent. The king smiled kindly and said, "You have raised a wise son, my friend." The minister bowed deeply, feeling his heart fill with gratitude. His son's wisdom had changed not only his father's heart, but also the king's understanding. The whole court learned something that day. From that moment, the king treated the boy with respect. He no longer called him foolish. Instead, he often invited him to speak during important discussions. Everyone in the court began to see wisdom in a new light. The boy, however, stayed humble. He never bragged about his cleverness. He still smiled softly and spoke gently. He continued to live his life quietly, with patience and kindness. The minister often told others, "Do not judge wisdom by noise." People started to remember his words. Slowly, the kingdom learned to value silence and thoughtfulness. The laughter of mockery was replaced by smiles of admiration. The boy's story spread across the land. People told their children about the clever boy who chose silver over gold. It became a story of quiet strength and hidden wisdom. Generations learned from it for years to come. The minister grew older, but happier. He often sat beside his son, watching him help others with calm words. Together, they shared peace that came from understanding life's deeper meaning. They lived simply, but their hearts were rich. And so, the story of the silver coins became a symbol of patience. It reminded everyone that wisdom doesn't always shine loudly. Sometimes, it glows quietly in the heart of the humble. That glow is what makes life truly golden. The minister often said to young people, "If you know what you are doing is right, don't show off." His eyes always softened when he spoke. Let your actions speak for you. Silence, when filled with purpose, is louder than pride. Each day he thanked life for the lesson his son had taught him. He realized that love and wisdom often come in the simplest forms. You just have to look closely and listen quietly. That is how true understanding begins. The story of the clever minister and his wise son lived on forever. It was told in homes, schools, and gatherings across the kingdom. Everyone who heard it felt inspired to live with calm strength. They learned to see the beauty in silence. Chapter 6. The Lesson for Life. The story of the minister and his son became more than just a tale. It became a lesson whispered in every home. People began to see that real success does not need to shout. True greatness grows quietly, just like a seed under the soil. Don't worry if people laugh at you when you do something different. The world often laughs before it understands. Many wise people in history were once called foolish, but their quiet courage later changed the world. The minister often told the court, "Do what is right, even if no one claps for you." His words spread like sunlight, warm and gentle. People began to listen and think more deeply. They realized that peace of mind was more valuable than applause. Sometimes, the path of wisdom feels lonely. When others rush forward, you might feel left behind. But every slow step in silence builds a stronger foundation. The one who walks with patience reaches farther in the end. Do not rush to show your talent. Let your actions speak for you. The world will notice when the time is right. Quiet effort always finds its moment to shine. The boy who once chose silver kept living his truth. He did not change for attention or praise. He continued to do good things silently. His calm heart became his strongest gift. People around him started to see how peace surrounded him. He never argued or boasted, yet everyone respected him. His quiet way of living touched others without words. That is what true influence looks like. The minister, now older and wiser, watched proudly. His son had grown into a man of great peace. He had taught his father, the king, and the whole court an unforgettable lesson. Wisdom, he realized, was not about clever speech, but about calm action. The kingdom itself began to change slowly. People talked less and listened more. They helped each other without needing attention. A quiet kindness spread through the land like a soft wind. The king often told his advisers, "Remember the boy who chose silver." His voice carried respect every time he said it. He showed us that patience brings more than pride. Everyone nodded, feeling the truth of his words. Even children began to repeat the story. They learned that it's okay to be quiet and thoughtful. They learned that laughing at others is easy, but understanding them takes wisdom. The story became part of their hearts. The minister's son became a symbol of silent strength. He was not rich in gold, but he was rich in wisdom. People came to him for advice, and he listened with patience. His calm eyes always held kindness and understanding. He often said to others, "You don't need to prove anything to anyone." His tone was soft but confident. "Just keep doing what feels right in your heart." Those words stayed in the minds of everyone who heard them. The world often misunderstands wise people, but time always reveals the truth. The ones who stay calm and focused rise slowly but surely. Their results speak louder than their words ever could. Even when no one believed in you, keep believing in yourself. Every great journey begins in silence. Every success starts with unseen effort. One day, the world will notice what you have built quietly. The minister used to say, "A calm heart can see clearly." He was right, because peace brings focus. When your mind is quiet, you can make better choices. That is how wisdom grows, in stillness. The son's story inspired not only the kingdom, but many lands beyond. Travelers carried the tale to distant places. Everywhere, people began to value calmness and self-control. The lesson of silver spread like gentle firelight through hearts. In every home, parents told their children, "Be like the boy who chose silver." They said it with love and admiration. It became a phrase that meant patience, wisdom, and self-respect. The story turned into a guide for living well. People learned that you don't need gold to be rich. You just need peace in your heart. When you know your own worth, others' opinions no longer matter. That is the real treasure in life. The minister grew old, but he was never lonely. His son's wisdom filled their home with light. He often sat in silence, remembering the day he first learned the truth. That memory always made him smile. Every morning, the minister thanked life for the lesson. He knew that wisdom was not in big speeches, but in quiet understanding. The more he practiced silence, the more peaceful his life became. The world outside could not disturb his calm anymore. The story of the minister and his son was told for generations. It reminded people that slow success is still success. It taught them to be patient, kind, and humble. These lessons never faded with time. Don't show off when you do something good. Let your work speak for itself. Those who truly matter will see your effort. The rest will learn when the time is right. In the end, the story became a timeless truth. True wisdom lives in silence. You don't need to shout to be understood. You only need to live your truth quietly and kindly. And so, the minister's family became a symbol of quiet strength. Their legacy was not made of gold or power. It was made of peace, patience, and love. That was the greatest success of all. Thank you for watching Easy English Official. Remember, quiet success is stronger than loud pride. Be patient, be grateful, and keep moving forward. If you liked this story, share it with someone who needs motivation today.